Thanks for tuning in to the Old Dirty Basement. On this week's episode, we're covering drug smuggler Barry Seals.
He's full of some high-flying excitement. There's some drugs. There's some famous names you might hear. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what people will do for money.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of it.
Yeah, so if you're listening on Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you're at, please leave that 5-star rating. If you're enjoying the show on Apple, you can leave us a written review. That really helps us out, helps us get discovered. And sit back, relax, and enjoy Barry Seals.
This is the Old Dirty Basement, home to debauchery, madness, murder, and mayhem. A terror-filled train ride deep into the depths of the devil's den.
With a little bit of humor.
History.
And copious consciousness.
I'm your announcer, Shallow Throat. Your hosts are Dave, Matt, and Zap. I love you, Matthew McConaughey. All right, all right, all right.
Hey, this is Dave.
Matt.
And Zap.
And welcome to the Old Dirty Basement.
Where every week we cover a true crime,
Murder.
Or compelling story.
So sit back,
Relax.
And comprehend.
Hello, 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 and welcome down to the Old Dirty Basement on this beautiful December afternoon. This is something different for us on a Sunday. How's everybody doing?
Great, man.
Good.
Happy to be here.
Good.
Yeah. Got football in the background. Might be a little distracting, but I'll try to stay focused here. I think the story will keep my attention, though. So
I hope so.
So, yeah, what do we got today?
Well, we have been doing, for lack of a better word, serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
We've been on a streak of those for a bit. Today we're going to venture off a little bit. True crime, nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
But today we'll be getting into Barry Seal.
So I know Matt and I talked before about getting into talking about the cartels and all that, something we haven't really delved into.
Mm-hmm.
But we're excited about this one for sure. What was the one, Matt, that we had talked about before and it came up? Was it maybe the mafia stuff?
Yeah, we had, that was it was still.
Gemini Method.
Yeah, like
That's
Zach
right.
was saying, it's still true crimes. We're usually sometimes talking about extreme murders or like something pretty bad. I mean, there is some bad stuff going on here a little bit later in the story or whatever, but yeah, it's true crime nonetheless. Something fun to talk about.
Right. And Zap brought this to our attention. I wasn't even aware of this or that there was a movie. So you said there's a movie about this?
Oh, yeah. There's actually a couple of movies.
I saw the one with Tommy Cruise, right?
So Tom Cruise's is one. His is American Made.
Okay.
Came out in 2017. There's an additional one that had come out back in the 90s, like 91. It was called Double Crossed. It had Dennis Hopper as the role of Barry Seal.
And how
been good.
Yeah, I like him for sure.
I just found that out this morning, and I wish I would have, if I had the time, I would have watched it.
Yeah, I actually didn't see either of them. I didn't. Well, actually, the American Made, I thought maybe I saw, but I was thinking of a different movie.
Yeah.
I looked it up. I definitely want to see it. Is it pretty accurate to this story, or is it
tough to say?
Yeah,
it's tough to say because the way that this plays out, the director of the film, who is Doug Liman, and again, this is the director of American Made, he says that it was never set to be a documentary. Rather, it was supposed to be a fun lie based on a true story.
Kind of like Blow.
is that not as accurate either? I don't know. That's a real guy.
Yeah, it's
Blow.
a real guy. It's a real story.
Yeah.
But they said the movie, sometimes to make it more glamorous,
Oh yeah,
like maybe things didn't happen the way that you saw on the movie with Tom Cruise, like he's landing in the middle of the street somewhere or something like that.
right.
But it's still a true story nonetheless. Any true crime.
So certainly a true crime, certainly a true story. I think you get I don't know. It's
Gist?
Well, no, you get one gets the elusiveness from the director on this, because as we'll delve into and find, there was significant federal government interaction with this guy and having to go out, and not having to, but choosing to go after the cartel, the Medellin cartel.
Sometimes a bad choice.
So there are certain things that you're gonna hear that, oh, that's, it's embellished. That can't be true. In reality, maybe in fact it is, or vice versa. It's like you're going to lie about one thing and not lie about another, or accept the what do you call it, Matt? What did you call it one time? Truth lie.
Truth lie.
Truth line.
Yeah, a truth lie. Truth lying. So yeah. We'll
like you said, with his tie-ins with CIA, things like that, a lot of this stuff probably was when they talk to somebody, they could say stuff about it, but what truly happened might be locked up somewhere. That
Could
still
be.
might be.
It could be.
Not
Or
yet.
it could be so outlandish that you couldn't believe it to be true. But in fact, maybe it actually is.
Maybe it is.
Or somebody told you, yeah, the guy landed the plane in the middle of the street. There was cocaine everywhere. People were like, man, what a lot. But there was like 20 people there that actually saw it.
Yeah.
So something that really happened.
Who's to say?
Yep.
Who's to say? I wasn't there.
Me neither.
So when you told me about this story, I have a friend that's a pilot. I think Matt knows him too, a guy named Mike.
Mm-hmm.
He lives locally here. And I called him just to talk to him about this story and get some, being a pilot, commercial pilot, and he flies privately for a gentleman. I figured he'd have a lot of good input on the
Just
story.
one guy?
There's one guy that he is basically his pilot. I need to go here. I need to go there.
I need that guy's job.
I know, right? But he also flies commercially for an airline, basically on call. If they need, hey, we need you to come down and fly to wherever. Out of Philly, he drives down and goes. But he was telling me some cool stories about being a pilot like that and having access to a plane that basically you want to pick up and go somewhere. You have to provide the fuel and everything, but he took his friends, for instance. He was telling me a story. He went on a quick little trip to Vermont, flew up there. There's a brewery up there, a brewer named The Alchemist, who brews a beer that's number one, at the time was number one on Beer Advocate. It was called a Heady Topper. Really hard to get. You have to basically be in that area to get it. It's not shipped anywhere. And they only brew it from time to time, so you have to be at the right place at the right time to get it. They took a weekend trip up there, just hoping to land some and bring some back, and kind of did a brewery tour up in Vermont and flew home. And it was basically like 3 buddies, and then he was a designated driver because he's flying.
Yeah.
Like cool things like that. But he gave me 2 local stories dealing with cartel and drug running that happened in PA, and I'd like to talk about them. We'll get to them maybe at the end. So I'd like you guys to obviously stay tuned for that at the end. I'll get into it a little bit. But
Wow. Well, for all the kids listening out there, if you want to learn how to fly something right now, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's work for you.
Yes. Anywhere.
Yep.
Both public and private.
Sure. Everybody, and somebody's going to hire a pilot no matter what.
Yes.
So Barry Seal. This is Alder Berryman, quote, Barry Seal. He was born on July 16th, 1939. Again, for those out there who have seen the movie, the more recent one, American Made, this is the character that Tom Cruise had played. If you wanted to, I don't want to say follow along, but at least give you some kind of familiarity.
Fast fact on Barry Seal, his father was a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Seal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Barry Seal, fun fact. He was actually the first informant to infiltrate the Medellin cartel.
Oh, wow.
Certainly not the last,
No.
but no. So he's got that under his belt.
That's a ballsy move.
He can put that on his resume.
Yes.
So there's not much documented about him with respect to his childhood or his formative years. What I was able to find is that he began flying at 16. He worked odd jobs around Baton Rouge, Louisiana's downtown airport in exchange for flight time. So as one is getting their license, for sure you must have X number of hours in order to qualify.
Right.
And flying a plane is not cheap, or using a plane is not cheap.
That's what my cousin, actually, he flew for the Navy. But when he was a kid, that's what they would do. If you were interested in flying, they would get you odd jobs around the, what's it called, the airport there and stuff like that, around the small hangars, cleaning up, learning how to like change oil, do stuff like that to the plane, and in exchange for flight time.
That's awesome. That's bartering.
Yeah, and
Bartering.
my son, being 17, we're looking at what do you want to do for college? What do you want to look into doing? Well, one of the number one jobs that's having a huge turnover, like workers that are 55 and older, is airline mechanics. And it's a good paying job. They'll actually pay for your tools and everything. If you go to school, commit for like 21 months. But a lot of those guys get into that and then turn that into, they'll get their foot in the door with an airline and then get their flight hours or turn that into a career.
Like we said earlier, I mean, everybody's going to need a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people are not going to stop flying.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Not even after 9/11 where people stop and flying.
Right.
Well,
True.
That's true. So this guy, he earned his, so after some hard work and some bartering of his time and services, he earned his private pilot's license at the age of 17 in 1956 and graduated high school in 1957. So that's kind of cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, man, hey, you're trying to pick up chicks or doing whatever.
Yeah.
Like, hey, baby, I can fly a plane.
Fly you to the prom.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
That'd be fly you to the prom. That'd be great.
That would be awesome.
That's what you always had, like that girlfriend that you met at the beach. You'd be like, hey, I can come pick you up in my plane.
Yeah.
She'd be like, no way, you're lying. And then you show up.
You could do a lot in a Cessna, but you know what I mean?
How are you going to fly, though?
Yeah.
Autopilot.
Could you get like Airhead?
Yeah. Well, we've all seen Airplane, right?
Easy. This isn't a sex-rated
No,
podcast.
I'm just because like if you were flying a plane, that'd be cool. I don't know.
Well, you saw Airplane. They had those inflatable,
Yeah,
the autopilot.
that's right.
Stryker, right? Is that guy's name?
That's right.
Captain Stryker.
Stryker.
So this guy got his license in 1956. But fun fact, in 1955, he joined a Civil Air Patrol unit at Lakefront Airport in New Orleans. So like 16, whatever. One of his co-cadets was Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The assassinated Kennedy. Yeah.
Sure did.
What a tie-in to the story.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Allegedly killed Kennedy with what? I forget the senator. I'm trying to think of the guy that came up with the magic bullet theory.
Oh, yeah.
The grassy knoll.
The magic bullet theory. He was a Pennsylvania senator for forever. Senator from Pennsylvania, Arlen Specter.
Arlen Specter.
Arlen Specter. Yeah, he came up. He was the one that came up with the magic bullet.
That did like 6 turns,
Yeah.
a loop, back through the window, through the mirror.
It was amazing. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, crazy bullet. One man.
People believe what they're told.
One man.
In 1962, old Barry Seal joined the Louisiana Army National Guard for a 6-year stint. He earned an expert riflesman badge and paratrooper wings. He was assigned to Special Forces, which
20th Special Forces Group.
which
Airborne.
which we know is has close ties to military intelligence and the CIA. And yes, Matt, he graduated from the U.S. Army Airborne School.
This guy was no dummy.
No, he's
No,
no
not
dummy.
at
He's
all.
a smart kid.
While he was in the National Guard, he was in active duty for 5.5 years. After 6 months, I'm sorry, he was in inactive duty, if that makes sense. The reserve part, like what makes the thing reserve.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in inactive duty for 5.5 years after 6 months of active duty. He got a job at TWA as a flight engineer.
It's Trans World Airlines.
Indeed, that's Trans World Airlines. It existed until 2001, until it was purchased by American Airlines. Thank you for that, Matt.
Thank you for that, Zap.
So he was one of the youngest pilots to be regularly assigned the Boeing 707, which is
It's
a big
plane.
big ass plane.
Yeah.
So for this young dude to be doing that, he must have been doing something right.
You're not putting a young kid behind
No,
a plane that expensive,
no, definitely not.
especially with passengers too,
The 707, and then he became the youngest for the 747, 747?
I can't speak to the 747. I know that he was one of the youngest for the 707.
Yeah, he flew the 707, and then it says a year later he became the youngest captain of a 747.
How about that?
Both very large airlines,
that's
very
even
large
bigger
planes.
than, right?
Mhm.
Biggins.
Imagine.
They're definitely biggins. Well, not long after his flight career, he got arrested in 1972 for his involvement in a plot to illegally ship plastic explosives to Mexico.
It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Look, that's like, part of the flight school.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess.
life, man.
Fireworks.
Same thing, right?
You're taught your pitches and your yaws, and then you're also taught how to smuggle plastic explosives to Mexico.
Right.
Again, we're talking about a true crime and somebody that was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
It's is that part of our? Are we looking for that in the triad?
No.
Yeah,
The
in the
McDahmer, is that a new thing to add now through this podcast?
in the McDahmer triad.
We can look back at them and
Military background. I think that would probably be. I mean, if there's any detectives out there looking around, look at military background.
see. Right.
He was arrested by U.S. customs agents in New Orleans for trying to smuggle 7 tons of military explosives through Mexico to Cuba.
Was that like C4?
Yeah. I wonder what if
Hold
it
on.
was-
I think what Zap's saying. I thought I read something. Yeah, Shreveport Regional Airport with almost 7 tons of plastic C4 explosives.
What do you think it was for?
So let's not forget that the guy had
9/11.
So 1972.
Oh.
So let's not forget that the guy had CIA experience, having been assigned to Special Forces while in the Louisiana National Guard.
Mhm.
So there could very well be a tie in here. And also, when this all went down, he was not fired at the time from his job at TWA because the CIA actually intervened.
Yeah, then he'd take, like you said, medical leave or something like that.
Well,
Is that what it was?
I'm thinking yes. But this might have come later.
Oh,
No.
okay.
That this is it. This does tie into that.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, these military explosives were destined for a CIA-trained cell of anti-Castro Cubans.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, and he just got caught, right? So this is the feds trying to work something out, and he got caught by the local authorities.
I got you.
So the case fell through when it was, wink, wink, dismissed. But then later, TWA fired him anyway because he had faked sick leave in order to participate in this explosive, scheme.
Right.
This also
Like
is
technicality, really.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, but this also isn't the first time you see this happening with people that are intelligent, like Mr. Seal. They get caught for something, and when they're caught, it's the CIA and like people look at them and say, like, how can we turn this guy into helping us? So it's one of those things, like when you're nailed like that, sometimes it's not an awful thing because it can end up.
They find your strengths.
Yeah.
Look at Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
That story of that dude is textbook what Matt's saying.
And what you're talking about him getting fired even after being excused or whatever, dismissed, the guy that I talked to was talking about, there's no leniency with the FAA. If you mess up, pretty much you're banned, you're done.
Right. Well, after this little incident in 1972, not long after, this guy began his smuggling career. So he started his smuggling career in 1976. He'd organized a team of pilots and aviation mechanics. They smuggled marijuana from Central and South America into the United States. And we were just talking earlier about some marijuana stuff that I'm sure you'll be getting into later for some fun facts.
Mm-hmm.
But, marijuana weighs, it's not necessarily the biggest bang for the buck with marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sure was then, but there's better money in cocaine.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, especially since today marijuana is,
it's everywhere.
Somewhat, yeah.
Right.
It's so legal right now that for people to push marijuana is a lot. I mean, you must have some sort of like special blend, or they're working on that shit for like months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you can pretty much get good stuff with a what is that, a card, a legal card, or
The prescription card?
prescription card?
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. Thank you.
No.
Not to mention, like, not by weight, but just even by packaging it, it's more dense, right? Like with marijuana, it takes up more space, would you say?
Oh, so back in our day, we had brick crap weed, and this was the stuff that's like backpacked and
So you get
it's
more-
all crushed down,
Down
like
to nothing.
super crushed
So
down.
you can consolidate it into...
You can, but equally
you
that's
didn't get more
shit
bounce
weed.
for the ounce.
Right.
It was crap weed.
Right.
Nowadays,
Seeds everywhere.
nowadays you look around at any of the dispensaries and stuff. I mean, it's all these glowing little nuggets and ingots and
Right.
Called like Poppy Kush and
Little hairs
Super
and-
Duper and
crystals all over.
crystals
Right.
falling off.
Yeah. So anyway, old Barry moved into cocaine in 1978. Certainly, there's more reward for the weight.
Is that juice for the squeeze on that?
There's much more juice for the squeeze. If you're going to be flying, you're gonna be flying the juiciest drugs, and this is cocaine.
You want to fly kilos, not poundage.
Correct.
Right.
Well, so a kilo is 2.2 pounds. So you're
Yeah, it's yeah.
flying
You're
twice as
double, yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
using the term kilo. So he would often move basically 1,000 to 1,500 kilos of cocaine per trip, which you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 pounds.
Right.
Now, what was really liked about this guy by the drug guys was that he would operate at the drop of a hat with little or no notice. Like you just call him, "Hey man, we need this to go." Okay, ready when you are.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, not like give me a day, give me a week, give me whatever. Nope. Like he would drop everything and go do it. And what else is he doing?
Right.
He sure as hell isn't working at TWA.
And
He has-
he owns his own plane, correct? At this time, he has his own. Is that why he's like the drop of the hat?
Correct. So
Okay.
and that's the thing. Like he's Johnny on the spot when it comes to this because he can be. I mean,
Yes.
that's how you do business.
Right.
So he's got a team of pilots. It's not just him. He's got a team
Yeah,
of
his little
pilots.
team is
and mechanics.
Mechanics, excellent.
So he's ready to go. After three years, however, the operation came to a halt in 1979 when he was arrested in Honduras while returning from Ecuador for having an illegal rifle in his cockpit.
Oh, wow.
So this is that I think I've mentioned this before. It's like, look, if you're going to break the law, just break one law at a time.
We talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, like if you're driving drunk,
Don't have
Don't-
a broken tail light.
don't have a broken tail light.
Or have like a
Or
pound
don't
of
fail
weed.
to signal. Don't fail to signal.
Don't have weed and be drunk at
Yeah.
the same time.
One or
so-
the other.
Yeah. So with this illegal rifle, for getting caught with this illegal rifle in his cockpit, he was arrested in Honduras. He was imprisoned in Honduras for 9 months. But this was a good turning point for him because while in prison, he met Emil Camp, who was also a pilot and smuggler from Louisiana. So basically he's just like, hey, I fly and smuggle shit too. And I'm from Louisiana too. Hey, that's great. And he also met Ellis McKenzie, who was a local Honduran smuggler. On his way home from prison to the United States, he ended up meeting this guy named William Reeves, who was ultimately the one who connected him to the Medellin cartel.
Oh, big
Yeah,
money.
he was his hookup. Yeah.
It's all about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1980, he hired his ex-brother-in-law, William Bottoms, to join his existing team, which was Emil Camp and Ellis McKenzie. He ultimately became the main pilot, this William Bottoms. Barry ended up doing more of the deal making and overseeing all the operations. So they got this good biz going.
He's like a manager then.
Yeah,
Just
he's the one that pulled everybody together. Like, hey, Emil Camp and hey, Ellis McKenzie, when you guys get out of prison, we're going to all work together. Got his brother-in-law, so now he's got these. There's 4 of them.
And prison is a very good place for that. People think that you go to
Networking.
prison. Yes, it's all about networking. They meet people. They're like, hey, you're getting out in 3. I'm getting out in 4. This dude's getting out in 2. When he gets out in 2, he can start this operation for us. When you, and they get out usually within 10 years of all of them being out. They're back in doing business 10 times better than it was when they got in.
And they learn probably lessons getting caught.
Yeah, getting
Let's
caught.
not do this, not do that.
Trade stories.
Yeah,
So
Makes sense.
sharing knowledge.
mm-hmm.
So in 1981, we enter the cartel. This is where Seal made his first smuggling flight for the Ochoa brothers. Now, is it Ochoa or Ochoa or Ochoa?
Ochoa.
Okay. In 1981, Seal made his first smuggling flight for the Ochoa brothers, who were a founding family of the Medellin cartel.
The Medellin.
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 The L's are silent.
So now he's going like the Costco. He's going wholesale.
Yeah.
He's going direct.
He's going direct. He's definitely going direct. And,
He's in love with the Costco on this one.
and it just went on and on from there. So his method was, certainly a smart one. Once he entered U.S. airspace, he dropped. So he's flying up from the, Central America. Once he'd enter U.S. airspace, he'd drop down to 500 feet above sea level, and he'd slow his planes down to 120 knots, which is a knot is 1.15 miles an hour. So let's just call it a mile an hour.
Right.
So he slow down to basically 120 miles an hour. And again, he's at 500 feet. This makes his plane look like a helicopter on radar, especially at that speed. And helicopters were regularly used around that area for offshore oil rigs. Like they'd fly out to the offshore and they'd be flying back all the time. So again, on radar, he just looked like one of the other helicopters.
So they're kind of just not really paying attention to it. They're like, oh, that helicopter's out there doing work over there for the company. Don't worry about that, Jim. Just drink your coffee, eat your donut.
Yep.
Back to work.
Absolutely. He also had, this is truly an example of the old phrase, flying under the radar.
Yeah.
He was actually flying through the radar. So he also had spotters on the ground watching his planes to determine whether they were being followed. And of course, if they were being followed, it's like, all right, don't do anything. Just keep on flying, land, do whatever. Just fly your plane and land your plane. But if they weren't being followed, they would drop duffel bags full of cocaine into the swamps of Louisiana. And they'd later send helicopters to collect the duffel bags, which would take the bags to offloading or logistics sites, by car or truck to the Ochoa Brothers distribution sites in Miami. So you got this whole
Ochoa Brother Distribution Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got this all in our head now. So he's flying this stuff in, low flying plane, just dropping the shit into the swamps, then going back, getting it out of the swamps, driving it off to Miami.
And with the what I saw in the movie with Tom Cruise, that was called American Made.
Yep.
Yeah. When they would show these scenes, they did have like 20, 30 people. Think about on the ground, you're looking up, spotting for where he's coming through with this plane. And like half of that stuff wasn't even recovered. At most times, some of it would hit the ground. There'd be like explosions of coke everywhere. Some were getting lost in different parts of the swamp where they couldn't get to. You got to figure there's like, snakes, alligators, whatever out there. But it just shows you like the amount of cocaine that these guys
Oh my God, yeah.
were actually bringing in at that time in like the 80s. Just an insane amount that they could lose so much and not really, it wouldn't be like at the top. They'd be like, all right, just go, we'll fly around again. We'll do it next week, you know? And they just kept this rotation going. But it's crazy how much they were bringing in.
Yeah, it's not like they would lose, like exactly like you would say. It's not, if they lost X number of bundles, it's not like business is over. It's like, oh, shit, that's a cost of doing business. You're going to have shrinkage.
Yes, yes.
And I read a part, and I don't know if you have anything in there about like them making sure that a lot of these people didn't know each other because of basically if you, like the people on the ground would not know who the pilots were and vice versa. They'd be like strangers almost.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I guess just to keep.
You couldn't rat somebody out.
Yeah,
then.
because if you get
the less you know.
you know what you like. You know your little part of it, and that was it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, which I guess does make sense. Yeah, because you don't. That's less. You cannot start tracing your way back to the cartel or whoever.
And
else.
that's like the same with the like mob roots cartel. That's like the head of the mob really didn't speak to anybody,
right?
Because he didn't want to be involved and he didn't want to know anything. And that's kind of how they did this stuff too. Because if you bust somebody, he's like, oh, I know this guy who's somebody lower or maybe one up, but you're not going to the top.
Yep. So within a year of doing this, by 1982, he was using a dozen aircraft by now.
Dang.
And the frequency of his flights was just ridiculous, like almost daily with these flights. He moved his operation to, he ended up moving his operation to a regional airport in Mena, Arkansas, and operations continued. However, he would fly from Mena to Colombia and Venezuela. He would refuel in Panama and Honduras and then return to Mena.
What year was this? Oh, in like 81?
82.
82.
82.
And so having moved to Arkansas, however, instead of dropping his duffel bags into swamps, duffel bags were parachuted onto farms that SEAL owned.
Now that's smart.
He just bought all this dirt in Arkansas for, I'm sure,
Nothing.
dirt for pennies.
Right.
Like, shit, yeah, I'm just going to parachute these packages onto my own dirt.
Yeah.
Now that's cool.
And then you know exactly where they're at. You're not jumping in the swamp.
Hell
you know,
yeah.
Alligators
You're
biting
not getting bit.
you. Yeah. And you gotta get less people too, because they know you can what's that word I'm looking for? Map it out. You can map it out much better.
Sure. Absolutely.
And then pop. Look in this 100 square mile. You'll find it.
Yeah. And so instead of helicopters going in to get this stuff out of the swamp, the bags were just simply collected by dudes in pickup trucks. Just driving their pickup trucks around, and then they were delivered to New Orleans, Miami, and New York.
And that's the thing too, like you were saying, you don't think of, you said Arkansas as like a drug capital, you know, you're not looking for that stuff.
No.
Not like Florida and, you know, where the hot spots are.
You're going to think hot spots. In Arkansas, anything in Arkansas is not necessarily a hot spot for much of anything.
They got good wild pig there.
Pretty smart.
Razorbacks.
And there's Walmart there, right?
Yes,
There's
Walmart. Big
from there.
Walmart.
Is that their home?
Is it Bentonville, Arkansas or something like that?
I know it's in Arkansas. I don't know the exact area, but Dave's probably right on that.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
I trust you. I trust you. So that was in 1982. However, the feds were actually on to SEAL by 1981. So they knew about what he was doing back in 1981, but they didn't get him. They wanted to see where this was going to go. And by the time 1982 rolled around, he had been contacted by the CIA to run weapons and supplies to the Contras in Central America, the Contras in Nicaragua.
I read in 1981, that's where he had his own Learjet, correct?
Did he?
Yeah, it says in 1981 he owned his own Learjet, which he bought from Reggie and Bill Whittington. I guess they were like millionaires or billionaires or whatever. In 1981, the brothers were arrested and charged in Florida for importing 400,000 pounds of marijuana and evading taxes on $73 million.
Makes sense. Yeah, so the CIA had this guy running weapons and supplies to the Contras. The Contras were anti-Sandinista rebels fighting against socialist Nicaragua.
I like that word, Sandinista.
Yeah.
Sandinista.
And it is Bentonville, Arkansas.
There you
Walmart. So
There you go. Home
Where
to
was
Walmart.
Bentonville, Arkansas.
Okay,
That is
cool.
where Walmart is. So
Thank you.
So, fun fact, the guy that linked Barry Seal with the cartel, that William Reeves, according to him, Barry paid millions to the Clintons while Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas in order to do this business in Mena.
Wow.
Now, it's been refuted by Seal's biographer, but these are the things that it's like, oh, that can't be true. Of course, there's no way he would have paid the Clintons this much money. But again, that's the truth lie, right?
Right.
Who's to say?
You know, Barry, that's some really good, fine shit you got there.
He did not have sex with that woman.
Yeah.
Barry Seal.
So he knew. Wait, he went to college, or he went to the Army with, who was the guy that tried to assassinate Kennedy?
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald. He knows William
Clinton.
Jefferson.
Yep.
And
William
he also reached out to George H.W. Bush. I don't know if you're getting there.
We'll get there.
Yes, okay.
We'll definitely get there.
And there was, another thing that had Oliver North. He also had ties with Oliver North.
We will absolutely get there.
All right. Hold on tight, guys.
We're just going to jump to the last page. So he talks to Oliver North, and he talks to George Bush. That's the end.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Yeah.
He got there, yeah.
Yeah. So over the course of this time of doing this fantastic entrepreneurial work that he's been doing, some allege that he was receiving as much as $500,000 per flight from the cartel. As later stories were printed, it got exploded a bit more. The Washington Post at one point reported that he was getting as much as $1.5 million per flight. I don't know how this works. I'm no scientist. I don't know what the going rate for flying a plane full of drugs is. I gotta imagine it's pretty high, but who's
500 is fair.
500 is fair, but after all was said and done, his total fortune that he had amassed, basically just from this year of work with the cartel, was anywhere from $60 million to $100 million
in 1 year.
In 1 year.
Wow.
That is insane.
Yeah, if you can get away with it for a year, you're set for life. But how do you explain all that money then? That's the only thing. You'd have to hide it.
Well, when you're in the cartel, they don't let you out after a year. It's one of them things where I think if you're in until they kind of say
you're done.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In not so many words.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I've seen
you don't
Ozark.
retire from shit like that.
I've seen Ozark, and Matt's right. According to Ozark.
Yeah, Ozark.
which is the end all be all of it's basically exactly what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Can never get out.
So talking about your numbers there with the 500 and then the 1.5 brings me to the story I was telling you about locally here. I say locally, but Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. Back in the same time frame in the 1980s, early 80s, from I think it was 1981 to 84, there was a company at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport. It was called Air America, and it was an aircraft modification company. So they would take airplanes, I guess, and change them around. So he would go to the main airport. There would be a payphone there that he would either, I forget if it was that he would make the call or the call would come in. It would come from Manhattan. There'd be a short call, about a minute and a half. And then the next day, he would receive instructions. The next day, he would fly to New Jersey, an airport in New Jersey, where he would land in a Cessna airplane, which is like a smaller airplane.
Yeah.
At which point, they would load up padlocked duffel bags worth $6 million in cash locked away in these padlocked duffel bags that he would fly down south to Colombia. So he was basically taking the money from the drugs that were coming in, selling them. They were distributing them. He'd take the money back, pick up the drugs, bring them back to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. Being a company that would modify these Cessnas, I guess the range on a Cessna was about 1,000 miles on a tank of gas, which would not get you obviously from Wilkes-Barre to Colombia. He would fit these Cessnas with extra fuel tanks to get a 2,500 mile range. So he was flying from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton direct to Columbia and avoiding detection because most planes had to stop in Florida, you know what I mean, if they were dropping the drugs, or like you said, Louisiana or Georgia.
Sure.
And there's no stopping him.
There's no stopping. He's flying straight through there. And they were not detecting them now. They said at the peak.
Because they're looking for planes that are coming out of the southern states.
Right.
What do they give it? They think a plane coming out of Pennsylvania. They don't even know where the hell this guy came from.
No.
Like this little plane, how the hell does this thing just keep going? So whatever. They didn't pay attention.
Yeah, they think they're hauling like scrapple and sausage.
And he would fly kind of out and around through like New York and come back into PA. He just did different things, I guess, to kind of, make it look like he was either flying around like a joyride or what. But between 81 and 84, he flew about 10 tons of cocaine from Colombia to the U.S. and then in return brought the cash back to Colombia, which they loved because that way they didn't, they had the cash in hand.
Sure.
They didn't have to.
Cash is king, man.
Right. And 1984 prices, that 10 tons of cocaine would have been about $300 million wholesale or $2 billion retail, which that's big numbers.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And like we were talking about per delivery, according to this, now this was a New York Times article from the 80s, it was $1.5 million a delivery was what he was making.
Nice.
Now that's, like I said, they made around $40 million in tax-free dollars. So this Air America, it was a group of guys that were doing this.
Wasn't that a movie also, Air America?
There wasn't, I don't know if it was based on this.
Oh, okay.
It might have been. I think Air America, wasn't that with Mel Gibson, or
It was a movie.
was a movie?
I don't know
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know exactly.
So they could land and blend in with these Cessnas. They could land on unpaved landing strips. They didn't have to worry about landing at airports and stuff, so they could go undetected. And nobody thinks, of these Cessnas of being able to make the trip. In the summer of '84, he deposited nearly $10 million in a bank in Harrisburg. And he said that it was from the sale of his company, Air America,
Wow.
he sold it to a Brazilian, he said, and that's where the cash came from. He sold it for
A Brazilian, which is more than $1 million and $1 billion.
That's right. That's right. They didn't even question it, I don't think. They were like, oh, okay, whatever. He got away with that. That wasn't the thing that got him. So the thing that got him was there was a pilot that crash landed in Georgia carrying a load of marijuana. He killed a driver that was parked on the runway with his headlights on to kind of brighten the runway.
Sure.
So he lost control of the plane, I guess, crashed, and they got him for manslaughter and the drug charge. And they were like, he's like, well, what if I can give you a whole operation, cartel and all that? So he turned this guy in and a bunch of them. And I think it was in 1986, then they ended up basically arresting them all, bringing them down, taking them to court. And then he ended up cooperating. And much like this guy you were talking about, kind of cooperated and was able to land. They were looking at bigger fish.
Yeah.
They were just climbing the ladder. So this guy, he was basically doing the same type stuff you're talking about. A lot of money in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And, it was an interesting story that it's kind of local here.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I wish I'd never heard that story before.
Yeah, and I don't know. He's in the witness protection, they said, and I don't know whatever happened to him. They don't really say.
He might still be protected.
Yeah, he might still be out there.
They're doing a good job then.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great story. So back to Barry Seal.
Back to Barry.
So he was making crazy amounts of cartel money, but the party is soon to end. So he, along with 80 other pilots, were indicted in 1983. 80.
Damn.
Were indicted in 1983 as a part of Operation Screamer, which was a DEA operation. That's a Drug Enforcement Agency. So he was busted by the DEA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for smuggling 200,000 Quaaludes.
Wow.
Quaaludes. Now, now, let's not forget, though, that we have, at this point, alleged some involvement with the CIA, that with this guy. At this point, the CIA completely would disavow their involvement with him. So let's bring this into perspective. This guy gets busted by the federal DEA. All he has to do is say, well, yeah, man, well, look, man, I might have gotten busted for this, but I was doing this, that, and the other thing for the CIA, not just but X number of years ago, flying guns down to the Contras or doing whatever. At which point the CIA will say, we don't know who the hell this guy is. We don't know what he's doing. He's out of his fucking mind. He's just making shit up. So he got busted in 1983 along with 80 other pilots, but he wasn't sentenced. His court hearing wasn't for a while yet. So despite having been busted, he still went and continued to run drugs for the cartel between the time he was indicted and his trial then in 1984. Yeah, what's he going to do? Sit around and watch movies? Nope. He's just going to continue to run drugs.
Yeah, and you think that's before pre-internet, so information is not traveling. The cartel is probably not aware of any of this that's going on.
Well, we're going to get to that little fun fact in a second. So not in a second, but in a few minutes we're going to get there.
Snitches.
So after his trial and his conviction in 1984, he was facing a 10-year sentence. He was trying to cut deals with the local DEA offices. This would be Fort Lauderdale or Baton Rouge, but they just kept turning him down. Amazingly, though, one of his former contacts at the CIA told him to contact, at the time, Vice President George Bush's Drug Task Force office. So he did. He had already planned to smuggle, he had still been working after he was caught, but before he was sentenced. He had already planned to smuggle a 3,000-kilo haul on behalf of the Ochoa brothers, and alleging the Nicaraguan government's involvement in or support of the cartel, he offered to bring the 3,000 kilos to America from the cartel's operation in Colombia. He was able to convince the DEA to monitor the shipment while he acted as their informant, and agreed to testify against the leaders of the cartel in exchange for a reduced sentence, of course. So after that little conversation with George Herbert Walker Bush's Drug Task Force, The next day, he flies down to Miami, and he unofficially, again, they will neither confirm nor deny, became a confidential informant for the DEA at a rate of pay of $800,000 per year, and the postponement of his sentencing for that Quaalude thing, for the 200,000 Quaaludes.
What year?
84.
84.
So the DEA was going to pay him $800,000.
Yeah, essentially.
Wow.
Call it the DEA, call it the Vice President's Drug Task Force, like whatever. It's just, off the books money, soft money, as it were.
That just goes to show you the amount of money moving around in all of this, that they're willing to pay that just to shut everything down.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The drug trade's not cheap.
So back to what you had mentioned, Dave. Now, despite his and the other 80 pilots' names being published in the newspapers as a result of that Operation Screamer, the cartel only knew him as Ellis McKenzie.
Oh, because his name.
This Ellis McKenzie is the dude. So obviously his name is Barry Seal.
Mm-hmm.
He met this dude in prison named Ellis McKenzie. This is one of those two dudes he met in prison. Whenever he would deal with the cartel, he just said, "Yeah, hi, my name's Ellis."
That was it.
That's it. Like he would just assume the name Ellis McKenzie. They never knew at all the name Barry Seal.
I'm surprised they want.
Yeah,
Like,
dig
let me see
deeper
some
into
ID.
that.
Like, you got ID or anything.
Not
I guess you
ID,
could fake
but,
it,
I mean,
though, but
Usually
I don't know.
they know like people in your family or like
check
extended
you out.
family.
That's the thing, and I'm sure he did that on purpose with that in mind.
Smart guy, like we said.
Yeah, I don't want him going after my family.
Yeah.
And this guy ended up, I think, over the course of his life, he was married like 3 times, and he had a bunch of kids. So, I don't want anybody going after my family. I'm just
He had
gonna
an extended family.
give him a fake name.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just shocked that the cartel want to call it that.
Yeah, like they would have been or had somebody. Like you said, you look at Ozark, they always got some guy like following you that knows.
Of course.
Yeah, that knows everything.
Absolutely.
Right.
So now he's officially working for the DEA, $800,000 a year, and his undercover work begins. After his meeting with the DEA, his smuggling flight, this 3,000 kilo flight, it was scheduled to happen 10 days after that meeting. It ended up being postponed, though, after Pablo Escobar had the Colombian Justice Minister, Lara Bonillo, assassinated. It's like, hey, man, gotta slow down the ops here. I'm on the run here. I've got some, says Escobar. I just might need to calm down here. I'm under a little scrutiny as I just had the Colombian Justice Minister assassinated. So this forced Escobar and the Ochoa brothers to escape to Panama. And then in May, these cartel leaders asked Seal to meet them in Panama. On the Ochoa brothers' recommendation, Escobar met Seal and decided to hire Seal directly for a shipment of his own. This is not the 3,000 kilo shipment. Forget that one. Forget it. This is a transportation of cocaine from Bolivia to Nicaragua and then to the United States. So Escobar gave Seal all of this money to buy a C-123K military transport plane to transport this cocaine. So he's like, look, you're the pilot, you're the man, you're the guy. Shit, I'll even buy the plane for you. After Barry bought the plane, he met with federal agents who mounted hidden cameras in the plane's nose, a fake electronics box that was facing the rear cargo doors. Like this was, candid camera type shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're taking whatever kind of plane and you're just making it just a mark, absolutely a mark. So on June 25th, 1984, Seal landed his plane, which he called the Fat Lady, in Nicaragua, flew it to Nicaragua. As the cocaine is being loaded, Seal, now check this out, as the cocaine's being loaded, Seal noticed that the remote control for the camera was malfunctioning. So he or his co-pilot would have to operate that rear camera by hand. That's basically standing there with near a hidden camera and pressing the exposure button, like pressing the click, click, click.
Taking pictures.
Yeah. The camera, and what's even worse, this camera was supposed to be soundproof, but when he started taking pictures, it was loud enough for everyone to hear.
Everyone to hear.
Like, you imagine this? Like, Jesus.
They're like, hey, what's that sound coming from the corner over there?
It sounds like a camera. What sound? No, that's not a camera. So to muffle the sound, he actually turned on a bunch of generators that were running around there because they're out in shit town. They're in the middle of a jungle.
Right.
Kind of hard to run, infrastructure out there.
No electric or anything. Yeah.
Right. But nonetheless, he got his photographic evidence. He was able to take enough pictures, and he got his stuff, and he got Escobar and the one Ochoa brother Jorge.
And then they call him, did you say in the beginning, El Gordo?
Do they call him El Gordo?
Because he was a chunky dude.
Yeah.
I thought that was the name of a cheese you find on Tonino's Pizza.
It might be too.
Mm.
Is that a Gordo? What does that mean? Like heavy or something?
Big.
Big. Okay.
Tu madre es fea y gorda.
El Gordo.
That means your mom is fat and ugly? Is that right?
El mucho feo.
Mm. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So not only does he get the pictures and he has the drugs and the whole deal went down as planned. Seal then flew Escobar's shipment to Miami, where it would be packed into a Winnebago and parked at the Dadeland shopping mall. Now the DEA followed the Winnebago in several cars and a helicopter. So a car accident was arranged where a trooper would just happen to be passing by. And it's, there's a car accident. Oh my God, look what I discovered. All these drugs are. What a coincidence. What a find. What is amazing, though, is that, this is a big deal, right? The cartel want to make sure that their drugs they're going to follow their drugs all the way from beginning to end.
Right.
So a cartel member saw this car deliberately ram this Winnebago, causing the accident. Like, he sees it. Like, there's no fucking way that happened. Like, that was just out of nowhere. That this car on purpose had to have hit this Winnebago. But despite that, Seal completely escaped suspicion, and the cartel sent Seal back to Nicaragua to smuggle more cocaine.
Wow.
They were just none the wiser. The DEA wanted Seal to fly the next shipment of this cocaine up from Colombia to Nicaragua in order to identify the cartel's cocaine labs there. But more so, they wanted to lure Jorge, Ochoa, and Escobar to Mexico, where the pair could be more easily extradited.
Okay.
Yeah. However, this would not happen, as the undercover operation was soon to end. So remember how he'd been contacted by the CIA to run weapons and supplies to the Contras in Central America back in 82?
Mm-hmm.
So the photographs that Seal had taken of that whole thing with Escobar, and again, he was the one having to snap the pictures because the remote was busted.
Generators and all that.
Yeah. These photos made their way into the possession of one, here it comes, Matt, Lieutenant Oliver North.
Thank you.
The National Security Council advisor, who was the one directed to supply arms to the Contras. Now, the White House wanted evidence that the Sandinistas were being funded by drug money, and Seal's photographs enabled that. The photographs also showed Escobar himself and Jorge Ochoa personally loading cocaine on board this plane. But lo and behold, on July 17th, 1984, an article is published in the Washington Times. It was an expose, as it were, detailing Seal's infiltration into the Medellin cartel. Like, this is
ongoing thing, and
this is completely blowing his cover, completely blowing it. The story even included one of Seal's photographs of Escobar himself handling the drugs. So again, completely blown, completely. But remember, the cartel only knew him as Ellis McKenzie. They don't know who the hell Barry Seal is.
They will.
Yeah.
Eventually. So despite having an agreement with the DEA and the Florida Drug Task Force, he was still under investigation by the authorities in Louisiana and Arkansas. So you would think there'd be some kind of coordination between the feds and the states.
A communication, yeah.
Yeah, no, apparently not. So this guy's getting hassled by these local, compared to federal, local, even though it's state, the state authorities while he's doing this business with the feds. And this stupid-ass article came out in the Washington Post. How does all of that information make its way to the Washington Post? Oh, we will see. So in an effort to apply pressure to Louisiana and Arkansas authorities, Seal ended up arranging to appear on a television whatever series in Baton Rouge, where he essentially was bashing government officials from Arkansas and Louisiana for harassing him. The cartel got a hold of these tapes. So they've now discovered that the guy that they've always thought was Ellis McKenzie is actually this dude named Barry Seal. He did it to himself. Just to bring this all together. The Washington Post story exposed Barry Seal, who nobody knew who the hell Barry Seal was. His picture was not in the paper. The other thing that got busted with the Winnebago back in Florida, that was, again, they only knew him as Ellis McKenzie. So now they've put the two together. Oh, this Ellis guy it's actually this Barry Seal dude. So almost immediately a contract was put on his life. $1 million if you bring him back alive, but $500,000 if you assassinate
If you
him.
kill him.
Still both good.
Good money.
That's good money.
That's both good money.
I'd do it.
You're not going to get in trouble for it.
No, man, you're a hero. So after varying trials for his own crimes, Seal was ultimately put on probation instead of jail. I mean, 'cause this, again, it's like, look, man, I was doing this in collusion
Right.
with federal agents, blah, blah, blah.
They were paying me for it.
That's right. So he was put on probation.
It was a job, man.
Yeah, well, a pretty good job. It looks like he was getting paid pretty well.
Yeah.
He was put on probation instead of getting jail time. And he was assigned to the Salvation Army's Community Treatment Center in Baton Rouge, which is essentially a halfway house.
Mm-hmm.
So on February 19th, 1986, Steele was gunned down by 3 assassins in the parking lot of the halfway house just 3 weeks into his probation. He was shot 6 times by a MAC-10 submachine gun with a suppressor. The hit was ordered by either Escobar or Jorge Ochoa.
Ochoa, yeah.
All 3 criminals were later tried and convicted to life without the possibility of parole.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So fun fact on that Washington Post thing, years later, during an interview on Frontline, Oliver North had mentioned that the government had instructed him to tell that whole story to a congresswoman. And then it was the congresswoman who then was ultimately responsible for leaking that story to the press.
To the media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time that the media blew, something like we were talking about in the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
With the investigation.
Yep.
And I mean, they want the juicy story and they want all that, but
So you see.
yeah, so juicy. But sometimes it just ruins everything, But yeah, that's crazy. And it's just like back then, I mean, nowadays with the internet and everything else is what I was talking about earlier, I think the cartel would have squashed this way earlier.
Oh my God, yeah.
And he would, but back then you could just fake your identity and get away with.
A fun fact on that, they said that George Bush Sr. was actually
Herbert Walker Bush.
Herbert Walker was, they said that Barry Seal had ties with the Bush family.
I mean, when you're dealing with this much money and power and everything else, I'm sure there's a lot of people that could be involved.
And they have both.
They have both.
And you know
Money,
it.
money and power.
Dark helmet.
Yep.
Yeah. So back to the third story I wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah, do tell.
So we live in the Harrisburg area. And back in 2009, there were 2 gentlemen from the Harrisburg area, I guess, that took a plane to Tucson, Arizona, and picked up a shipment of marijuana. And they were looking to fly it back here to the Harrisburg area. And they had to stop to refuel in Arkansas. Huh, how convenient.
How about that?
Yeah. I wonder if there was that. Now, this is in 2009, so, this is much later. Somehow between when they took off from Tucson to they landed in Arkansas, the Homeland Security was tipped off, and they had stopped and confronted them there in Arkansas, and they confiscated 420 pounds, and that's kind of funny. That's 420 of marijuana in duffel bags. Street value of $500,000 that they were bringing that marijuana, trying to fly it back here to Harrisburg. And I guess they got caught and convicted and everything. But yeah, that was in 2009. So just goes to show
Not long
you.
ago.
Yeah. Just goes to show you these drugs are probably flying all over the place, no matter where you're at.
Every time I look up and you see a plane flying over, I'm going to wonder, is there people in there? Is that a passenger thing or is that drugs?
Yeah. Yeah, because these are places that you wouldn't think. Like when you talked about this story, and I called my buddy there just to ask him, and he's the one who brought those 2 particular stories up. I was like, PA? Like, I can't believe that. I just wouldn't think of Pennsylvania. If you would have told me before all this, I would have thought, oh, the drugs come into Florida and they're trucked everywhere, or trucked or in cars and trunks and, all over to the major metropolitan areas. But I would have never thought about flying in state to state and everything else like that.
I would have flown them into the Amish and then distributed through horse and buggy.
Well,
that would take forever, though.
They did. Ooh, horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Gingras, he would have been down with that.
Yeah.
No one suspects the Amish.
No, you're right.
Huh.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
But that was a wild story. I definitely want to check that movie out.
Yeah, so for sure, by all means, please, with butter and cheese, check out American Made 2017 movie starring Tom Cruise as Barry Seal. And if you have the ability and you have the means, look up Double Crossed, which came out in 1981. which stars Dennis Hopper. That was an HBO movie that was made for HBO.
Okay.
But Dennis Hopper plays Barry Seal.
Now, did either of you watch Narcos?
No,
Netflix?
I have not. It was recommended to me years ago.
It's really good, and it's basically Escobar and his rise and everything else like that. They were making so much money that when they would fly these planes back and forth, if one would crash, so be it. They would leave it. They weren't trying to like recover it or repair it or anything. We'll just buy another one. Like that part of the story you were talking about here, go buy this plane.
Yeah.
Like the cash that they had on hand, he had to buy houses to hide the money in the walls to just get this cash kind of off the radar and out of the, public eye. I mean, people knew. He was kind of like, to the local people, he was a hero,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But
he gave to the church each Sunday, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, nowadays, like how much money is flying back and forth, and this is in the 80s. Is it worse now? Better? Do you think it's like in your guys'
things
opinion?
are done a lot cleaner, a lot. So, like if you have like the right address or whatever, I'm sure stuff gets mailed, and there's stuff where people's like hands probably don't get very dirty anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I just found it interesting with this story, like all the paths this guy crossed, being involved in drugs, all the names that come up, like the Clintons,
the Bushes,
Right.
North. What was the one you said before with I don't know, just plenty of big names out there. Drugs and
because
people
of the
become associated. It's the money.
It's the money
And
if
the
you're,
power,
If you're
like you
contributing
said.
and you're,
Both.
and like, yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, it's just that was a real interesting. That was a cool one to cover. You guys got anything else in closing on it?
No, I enjoyed it. It was a very interesting story, and it was away from what we usually, not say usually, but it was nice to something a little different.
Right.
I enjoyed it. Thanks. Al.
Yeah, this was great. This was great. Thanks for letting me pick this one. It was nice to get away. The only murder was his own.
Mhm.
Right.
So yeah,
was he a victim then? He was ultimately the victim.
He was ultimately the victim as he was assassinated with 6 bullets coming out of a Mag-10 submachine gun.
But this guy had that balls of steel. I mean, to go and meet with, in another country with a drug lord, and knowing that you're at any moment you could turn and get shot in the back of the head. You just never know where it's coming from. So this guy probably spent his life looking over his shoulder. I mean, he had all the money, but
Yeah, it wasn't like he came from nothing and had nothing to lose. He could have done very well for himself just with a regular job,
He
9 to
could have
5
been-
or.
Yep, he could have been a respectable airline mechanic, airline pilot. I mean, why not?
But when somebody throws that kind of money in front of you, that's where decisions are made. And I think a lot of people, being a regular working person, if somebody throws at that time $1.5 million in front of you,
for one time,
yeah, it's something to you really wouldn't think too hard about it.
I'd do it.
I think
yeah, it'd be tough.
he's honest. I think most of us would.
I got no problem saying that. I would do it.
If you get away with it, you're set.
Yep.
But then you always have that worry, like, of it coming back on you.
But I don't know, with
correct.
a cartel or like the mob or a cartel, I like there's no getting out.
Yeah.
I think once you're in it, you're in it.
And there's not enough bullets to stop all of them.
Yes.
No, yeah, you're right.
Don't think you're going to defend yourself.
Nope.
They'll get you.
So, yeah, I appreciate, Zab, you writing that up and taking us through. And, Matt, your contributions there. I guess, Matt, you're going to cover next week. What was it, John Wayne Bobbitt?
Yes.
Is that John Wayne
no,
Bobbitt?
John and Lorena Bobbitt.
John Wayne.
John Wayne. Is this Mike?
John Wayne Gacy?
John Wayne Gacy, that's what I was thinking of. John and Lorraine Bobbitt. That's
Yes.
Nice.
It was
Yeah.
it was a match made in heaven.
Nice.
right. Right.
I dated a girl named Lorraine.
Did you?
I
Was
did.
her last name Bobbitt?
Nope.
Oh.
Her last name was not Bobbitt.
Was it McFly?
No, it wasn't
Yeah.
McFly either.
Or no, what was Lorraine's?
So Lorraine, I hope you're
Baines.
listening in
Baines,
to
yeah.
the
Oh, sorry,
basement.
Baines,
Baines, yeah.
Baines, yeah.
So, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Don't forget to find us on Facebook and Instagram at Old Dirty Basement. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you're at, leave us that 5-star rating. On Apple, you can leave us a written review, and we'd appreciate that. And I guess that's it for now. We'll catch you where?
On the flip side,
If we don't see you sooner, we'll see you later.
peace. Thanks for hanging out in the Old Dirty Basement. If you dig our theme music like we do, check out the Tsunami Experiment. Find them on Facebook. Their music is available streaming on Spotify and Apple, and where great music is available.
You can find us at Old Dirty Basement on Facebook and Instagram, and at Old Dirty Basement Podcast on TikTok.
Peace.
We Audi 5000.